Perfect. Richland, do you have our agenda? Do you mind just throwing that up for me? Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Thank you all for being with us tonight. So first off, we're going to go through the budget this evening. The 2002 or I'm sorry, the 2021-2022 fiscal year budget for the Community Redevelopment Agency of West Palm Beach. For those of you that may not know me, my name is Christopher Rugg. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Redevelopment Agency. And I have various members with that are part of my team with us here. Let me make sure I don't miss anybody. The one kind of running the back of show to make sure that the trains are running on time is Richland. She's with us. Gina Baker is with us this evening. And then let's see if we have anybody else from the CRA team. Am I missing anybody, Richland? I don't see anybody. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. Alicia.
That's all right.
Dr. Wynn is with us, critical part of our team. Oh, that's embarrassing.
It's all right.
Yes.
It's 6 o'clock.
It is 6 o'clock. I know I've been running from one thing to the next. So anyways, so there's a variety of us that are on the call today. If you do happen to have any questions, we've got a wealth of knowledge where we can answer, hopefully answer it. If we can't answer it, we'll definitely get you the answer shortly after this meeting. So like I said, we're going to go over the fiscal year budget, primarily focusing on what is going to be spent on the historic Northwest this coming year. But we will go through the entire budget so you can kind of see how everything is balancing out across the variety of sort of sub-districts that are in the downtown city center CRA budget. There's a lot of things that we've tried to include in this budget for this year. But before I get too much into sort of the nuts and bolts of it, I do want to give the district commissioner for this CRA the floor for just a moment, just to say some comments. She and I, Commissioner Fox and I, have spoken about this budget fairly frequently, and as well as keeping in contact just on things that are affecting the historic Northwest. So Commissioner Fox, thanks so much for being with you. I know you just got out of a commission meeting, so we appreciate you being with us this evening.
Well, thank you. I won't take up too much time, but anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Christy Fox, the District 3 Commissioner. And as Chris said, we have been working very closely over the last year to make sure that we are incorporating all of the comments that we're hearing about what's important to the neighborhood. So I want to thank Alicia and everyone from the CRA that's also here, Richland. Sorry, I can't see everyone, but I know that we're in good hands to learn more tonight. And I just really appreciate the CRA team opening up the floor tonight to make sure that we're moving forward in the right direction for what the neighborhood is looking for us to do. So thank you so much for all being here tonight.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. Okay, so before I get, and I'll share my screen here on a moment to go through the budget presentation for this coming year, but I do just want to start out with a quick note. First off, ideally, this discussion would have happened a little bit earlier in the budgeting process. That is a flaw on my part that I'll be sure is rectified next fiscal year. With and a bit earlier in the budgeting process with all of you. But I do want you all to at least take some note, and hopefully you see this. And I think the point of this meeting today is to point out that if something you feel like isn't being addressed in this coming budget, that now is definitely the time to do it. there is still a little bit of time to make some tweaks. I wouldn't say major changes, but there is still an opportunity, I think, to make some tweaks to this budget. So we do want to hear your comments on that. But as you know, we've kicked off those quarterly meetings with the Historic Northwest beginning earlier this year as a way to, make sure that we are addressing not only just the big projects that are happening in the Historic Northwest, like Heart and Soul Park and the Sunset Lounge, which are very exciting, and they are going to be hopefully sources of pride for the city and the community, but also, basic things that I think what I've been hearing on a regular basis need to be addressed with equal importance. And those are things like housing, addressing some of the vacant lots that are happening, basic items like lighting and street signs, and making sure that the area looks clean and neat, and that it's well maintained and is basically presented in a very cared for manner. So hopefully you see some activities, and I'll point them out basically that hopefully represent the feedback that we've gotten over this past year that addresses not only the big projects, but also some of those basic things that I think the community is demanding to see addressed as we continue our progress through the Historic Northwest. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. Rishla and I have do I have rights to do that? Okay, please give me one moment. Oh, hold on.
You should be able to.
Yes, give me 1 second. Let me get set up here. Okay, can everybody see that? Everybody is looking at West Palm Beach Community Redevelopment Agency approval of the downtown city center strategic finance plan, right? That's what everybody sees? Great.
Yes.
Okay, so so the reason why it's titled this way is that this is the presentation that is essentially scheduled for the CRA board on September 7th. And it represents the agenda items that have to be formally adopted by the CRA board. So that's why it looks a little bit wonky and a little, you'll probably see some jargon in it, but that's just because those are sort of the legal language and things that we need to use in order to properly approve the budget. So, but we'll get into, you'll still get the same information of what's in the budget through this presentation. Oh, come on. Okay, so quickly, I'm going to go over the plan with a summary and revenues. Excuse me 1 second. I just want to make sure the sirens are going away. I am at City Hall, so there are a lot of fire trucks that go by. So we'll go through the revenues and expenditures. We'll talk about the projects that are coming forward. But before we get into that information, I do just want to do sort of a baseline of how the funding for the West Palm Beach CRA works. So we get the CRA is funded through two main funding sources. We get a portion of county taxes that are paid to Palm Beach County, and we get a portion of the West Palm Beach taxes that are paid for just for the city. And both of those sources combined come out to be about $13 for every $1,000 of value that is generated within those boundaries. So for instance, if a building is valued at $1 million, the CRA will get $13,000 of taxes from that building that comes to us, because what we do is we get approximately 4 mills from the county and 8 mills from the city, and that basically combines the two to generate the budget for the CRA, which we then have to spend in those areas. So the two different areas, you can kind of see how it's broken down, of where we get the revenue from those two sources. So approximately 14.5 million from Palm Beach County for the downtown. And then the city contributes 25.3 million that comes into the budget for this year. And then the DDA, they give us a portion, but then we rebate that back to them to cover one of their mills in their budget. And the way that it's structured is that we have to use those funds in the CRA boundaries. And we have to use those funds in accordance with the strict language that's set by the state. And then lastly, we use it to implement the working plan, which is intended to be shared with the city commission in October. We'll have a very specific work plan that will also be guiding the way that the budget is spent. So I just wanted to clear that up because there's always a lot of questions about where does the CRA get its funding and how is that generated, so on and so forth. So hopefully that's a little insight into the revenues and how we get the funding from the onset. So real quick, the area that we're going to be discussing this evening is the Downtown City Center CRA, and these are the sub-districts that I had mentioned earlier: Northwest, Brailsford Park, Downtown Core, Okeechobee Corridor, and Clear Lake District. And I will say that a little spoiler alert: majority of the funding that the CRA is getting is primarily focused in the historic Northwest. And that's just due to the sheer volume of projects that have been dedicated for that area. And where I have heard both community and CRA board members saying that the funding needs to remain at this time. So it reflects a lot of that on a very large scale level. It reflects that feedback that the CRA has gotten. So getting into the sources of funding. Okay, so this year we have had a pretty good increase in the tax increments that were contributed from those two sources that I had just mentioned, the county and the city government sources. We do have a bit of a carry forward balance. Now, I want to be clear on those carry forward balance. It does look like, there is about 13 million, but that carry forward balance is really money that's been dedicated to existing projects. And a lot of those projects are still moving forward. And there are things like the Sunset Lounge or the Tamarind corridor, Tamarind Avenue corridor, which is currently slated for a streetscape, which is, you might have seen them out there working on 7th Street, Styx Promenade, things like that. But one thing to note is that we have taken a very critical look at that carry forward balance and determined that some projects, though the funding that has been set aside, if it hasn't moved in the last few years, we have reallocated that to different funding sources. But for the most part, that carry forward balance that you see there is money that is dedicated to existing projects that are ongoing and that have maybe gone past just a year of a budget. A lot of projects just take longer than that. But in addition to it, there are some other minor income that we get from TDR sales. Those are transfer development rights, where somebody says, okay, we're not going to develop this site to its full potential, and we're going to sell those off to another site where they can build higher, and then some other revenue sources. Total, we're looking at a budget of about 71 million for this coming fiscal year. Moving on to expenditures, and this is probably where most of your questions are going to be, is where are you going to spend that money? So we do have quite a bit of debt service that we have to pay, and those are on just bonds and things that we borrowed for in the past. Innovative policing, that goes to our downtown units and some other things that really enhances the police presence and efforts throughout the the downtown city center core. We have a few projects that we're still paying and agreements that we pay a increment of those taxes back to development projects that have been built over the past years, and we rebate those taxes back to those development projects as a way to finance those projects. So there is about 5.8 million set aside for that. We then contribute, remember the DDA gave us that 2.2 million, and then we give them back that 1 mil of the 4.7, and that's just the nuance that we have to do in order to work with the DDA. And then we are setting aside 1.2 million in waterfront events and operation. That's a little bit of a reduction from last year. But overall, we do have about $23 million that are our target area initiatives, and a pretty healthy reserve for future projects, which we're anticipating a lot of those reserve for future project funds to be dedicated to the Brailsford Park area as that continues to be planned for development. So overall, that's how we match up the revenues with the expenditures. And now I'll get into some of the details on those numbers so that you can see the breakdown of that a little bit further. So as I mentioned, the Northwest target area is really the lion's share of the budget. And these graphically shows you just where those monies are going to be spent. It doesn't tell the full picture, but it gives you a bit of a tangible idea of where, in fact, we are spending some of the money. As we mentioned right from the get-go, Sunset Lounge is I like to say rocking and rolling. I was just over there the other day, and they are moving forward. If you had heard, on July 26th, we had another meeting on that project to go in depth on some of the construction activities and things that needed to be addressed with that project. As a result, the guaranteed maximum price for that project had increased. So there were funds that were budgeted for that. In addition to it, we've set aside dollars for an opening next year. We are anticipating, well, they have a hard deadline to have a temporary certificate of occupancy for that project in July of 2022. So we're anticipating that, and the funding is allocated accordingly. Heart and Soul Park, we, not too much left there, but we do have some funds set aside for that. And I'll just touch upon some of the highlights. Tamarind Avenue Streetscape, that's another a big ticket item where you'll see a big groundbreaking in the month of, we're anticipating October, where there'll be quite a bit of activity happening on that street from 7th to Banyan Boulevard. Single family home infill. I think I saw Miss Teal with us, Tawana. You have my word that this is something that is a very high priority, and the mayor asked me about it every week, where we are with getting that contract to get the houses built on the vacant lots. I think specifically for that one that you had mentioned, you have an area of concern at 6th and Division. And I know Gina, if you do have a question about that, Gina's with us and she can give you the latest, but it is moving forward in an aggressive manner. Another really exciting on the business incentives. Hopefully you've seen Flagler Station. That thing is going up very, very quickly. It looks great. And the Grand, which is Darren right next to you, you can expect a groundbreaking probably next month. I was just on the phone with the developer today, and they are getting all of their financing closing, I believe this week, if not early next week, so that they can do their groundbreaking ceremony and put a shovel in the ground. And then lastly, just a couple of other smaller projects, but not insignificant. The lighting on Douglas and Henrietta is substantial. When you see that, we've set aside about $1 million there. And NCAT will be doing some activities at the PAL Center, which is also exciting as we see some programming happening with them. So this is how the money is starting to shape up with all of those projects that I had just mentioned. So I'll start with the marketing and events. This is a bit exciting because we're going to be doing quite a bit of promotion around the Styx Promenade. We're going to be doing some activations in Heart and Soul Park, which is also very, very fun, and getting that park just programmed on a more regular basis. I'm frankly really excited about the winter. I've told Richland, I hope we see that park from space because we have so many lights on it. So hopefully it looks really, really sharp. We've put together a pretty healthy budget there. On the business incentives, there's I like to say a good budget to help with all kinds of programs that have been set aside for building improvements, facade improvements, and the variety of programs that we have. In addition to planning for some of our historic structures as well. Paint, plant, and pave is always a popular program that we get requests for funding on an annual basis. Getting into some of the neighborhood projects, and these are very specific projects. You'll see Fantasy Island, that's at Sappadilla and I believe it's 3rd Street. That is going to be a historic renovation project, pretty substantial, that'll put a small business, a restaurant, as well as add some updated housing, some workforce housing to it, and just really polish up that corner to make it a good structure. That is something we're anticipating coming to the city, the CRA board in the month of October. As I mentioned, the lighting on Douglas and Henrietta, it's going to be an expensive project because lighting generally is not cheap. There's a lot of coordination that needs to go into it, as well as some pretty hefty infrastructure. But all in all, we feel pretty comfortable with this, with the neighborhood stabilization. And then last but certainly not least, we are beginning to think, as these projects begin to be finalized throughout the historic Northwest, what do we need to do as sort of the next round of redevelopment initiatives? And there are some plans in place that we are looking at for targeting specific property acquisitions. And you can see there, we've made that a pretty big and new priority for 2022, is to start acquiring strategic parcels that can continue the progress of the historic Northwest. So let me just stop right there for a quick moment. If anybody, I see a couple of questions in the chat, but didn't know if there's any folks. All right, Tawana, thank you for chiming in. If anybody has something specific that they would like to talk about relative to some of the projects and information in the Northwest that you've seen here, just on this slide. I'll take questions at the end, but since it's hot, we have it right here in front of us.
Chris, can you give a little bit of information on the properties on, this is Ann Nelson. And can you give a little update on the properties on 5th Street and Douglas, between 5th and 6th Street on Douglas? Those 4 or 5 little shotgun houses that exist there. What is the update on that, on those properties?
Sure, Annie. I think you're talking about the Hot Box project. I believe it's the historic homes. There's 6 of them that are on Douglas between 5th and 6th on the east side of the road.
That's correct. Yes.
Sure. Annie, is it okay if I get to projects that are not related to the budget? Because we don't have any money set aside for that. I just want to make sure I get the budget squared up. But I am happy to answer that question at the end of the presentation.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
I had a question. Affordable housing, what dollar amounts and where would they be in its budget for affordable housing? I guess where, Habitat or whoever you pick are going to be building houses, presumably in the neighborhood.
So let me see here. We do have money set aside for housing. I mean, 311 Sappadilla will have housing related to it.
Chris, if I may,
Yes, Gina, I was just getting ready to call on you. Could you speak to that for us?
Yeah, I'll speak just very generally on it. We have several, I would say 6 lots that could be used for infill affordable housing in and around between 3rd and 6th Street. But more specifically off of 3rd Street. There were some homes or lots that were granted to an entity called SSCC, and we are in the process of getting those lots back. It is our intention, as soon as we receive title to those, to put them back out on the street, and they'll probably be part of, or we'll look at talking to Habitat to actually go in and do some infill housing on those. And those are essentially, Reverend Washington, one of them is right down the street from your church on 3rd Street. Another one's right on the corner across from your parking lot. And another one is right adjacent to the buildings you own on 6th Street. So those are 3 that we're getting back. But beyond that, the agency does not own any other lots for infill housing development. HCD has a couple, and we are in conversations with how that's going to come on board.
So Reverend, if there is a housing project that approaches the CRA in one of our programs, probably in the business development or neighborhood stabilization, we would look at where we might be able to help them with whatever needs that they may have relative to building that home. But generally, as Gina mentioned, there's not a specific set aside budget for actually building the housing, because what we would do is we would just use the lot and then get a private or not-profit like Habitat or somebody to build that home. And then they would put it out on the market and have it sold. So, and get some type of, loan on the project. We would keep the price down by reducing the cost of the land and the sale price.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Studstill?
Yeah, I don't want to take up too much time, but any lots that on 3rd Street, do we have any like preference if we're in the Northwest and we want to have the opportunity to take over and develop those sites? Will we get any preferences, or we just have to go through the process? When you put it back out there, we have to get that opportunity,
Yeah, I mean, what we can do, Darren, if you are interested in something like that, when we advertise it, we would just have to, we'll make sure you're noticed of the opportunity.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I'll second that.
Well,
Yeah,
hold on,
would-
Gina. So, because I don't want to get too far off track. Anybody have any other questions specific on this slide in the budget? Because I do have.
I have another question to this slide, though, Chris.
Okay.
Okay, and my second question is to the business incentives that I'm looking at.
Yes.
Is that a carryover from last year, or is that new money? Because I don't think we used all the money we did last year. In last year's, but is that a carry forward on there, or is that just what we have to spend on business incentives?
I don't have the breakdown right in front of me, Darren, but I can get you that information. It may be I mean, there are a lot of line items where maybe we didn't use all the money and we simply replenished it back. And it's sort of a hybrid of carry forwards and a reallocation to make sure that we get that budget up. In anticipation that we are going to need those dollars, because I know we're looking at those business incentive dollars, I think, to be, Gina, correct me if I'm wrong, but to be one of the sources to maybe help with some of the STICS projects, as well as some of the other businesses around the historic Northwest. So.
And I just want to make this note, because I noted the STICS. I just want to make sure existing businesses and areas, because one of my goals is to get every space in the Northwest occupied. I think that's, as we rise, we have to, but I just want to make sure that, okay, when we communicate with the property owners and we have possible new businesses, then we come and say, oh, that money has already been allocated somewhere else. That just look bad when you're trying to promote the area. So I just want to know what's the real numbers and,
okay.
And stuff like that. Lastly is on the neighborhood stabilization. I'm looking at all these projects here. How do you get, well, I'm just going to be specific, how do I get on this list to be a project in the pipeline moving forward, you know?
Well, I think well, Gina Baker is one of our project managers. But I think if you have a project that you would like to move forward with the CRA on, that you approach Gina, and we start working on what's needed, what you would like to do, and how it fits into the overall work plan for the Community Redevelopment Agency. And if we're open to any and all opportunities, we get quite a bit of them on a regular basis. So Darren, if you have an idea, I think it's starting the conversation with the area project manager, which is Gina. If you want to start with me and Gina, I'm happy to also make myself available, and we can start talking about whatever the vision and idea is for the project, so that we can get a plan in place and a budget allocated to it.
And if I may just close with that, that's absolutely correct. And if I may close with that point, what you see represented here are things that we're currently aware of and we've anticipated, but there is also dollars that are set aside that if we get something that we can bring forward to the CRA board and support it, certainly we can look back at those numbers and try to put the dollars there to make it work. Yeah.
Any other questions on this slide?
Hi, Chris. This is Tawana.
Tawana.
I just wanted to know about the lighting. Is that like at the top of the priority as far as the 2022 list that is going to happen at the beginning of the year instead of later in the year?
Yes. So Tawana, Gina can talk about where we are with the lighting, but this was intended to be a two-step process. One was we wanted to get security lighting out there as quick as we could, using a program that I think FPL has. But secondly was to get something that was a little more permanent and stabilized throughout the community. And so that's why we set aside the $1 million to make sure that the money is allocated. And you can expect next month to have a very clear timeline of how that money is going to be spent and when.
Absolutely.
And then, I would expect nothing less than to hold us to that plan that is presented. And
Right.
that's the whole idea behind having the work plan and the budget presented one after another. Once we know how much money we have in that set, then we can tell you exactly how we plan to spend it.
And finally, yeah, and Tawana, we will be reaching out to you and some of the other property owners directly who are affected parties to be sitting in those discussions when we have the conversation with engineering, because they're actually taking the lead on that project, but we're overseeing it because we're funding it. So you'll be a part of that discussion.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. And I have one more question. It's in regards to the new Heart and Soul Park. I don't see on the list that there's security for the park, and I haven't seen a lot of hanging out, but are we going to have some type of security monitoring the new Sunset, including the park where the children are playing, so that the adults do not take over this park?
We do have money set aside for security, but I know it's right now it's relative for the Sunset, it's relative to security for the construction site. But I don't believe that we have any money set aside for regular security for Heart and Soul Park.
The only thing that we do have set aside is that we will be having cameras installed here shortly that will be remotely monitored by PD. That is something we're working on as we speak.
Right.
With respect to regular patrols, I'll let Chris finish speaking to that, but that's another conversation.
Yeah, Tawana, we haven't set aside any money for security for the park on a regular basis to just be there. But as Gina mentioned, there's one camera up now, but but we're trying to get another one that's installed so that we have a very comprehensive view of Heart and Soul Park that is tied into the real-time crime center that PD has. And as Gina mentioned, I know that that'll be installed shortly because it's something that I follow up with Lieutenant Cliff Hagan on a regular basis. And it's just a matter of getting the contract signed and getting the work order issued so that we can get the camera installed.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, just a quick note on that. I just want to just throw this out there because I know at one time we had police and we had a security company. Are we thinking about later on? Because I just want to make sure the entire community is protected. I know we're putting a lot of interest on making sure we're protecting our major investment, which is the Heart and Soul Park and the Sunset, but just want to make sure that we still keep in mind that we protect, you know, other areas also.
Yeah, Darren, I couldn't agree with you
I
more.
just want to make sure as we go in budget and stuff like that, we all set a little portion aside because I just want to make sure we're protecting, you know, things as a whole. We have a holistic approach.
Agreed. And you'll see that because we've sat down with PD a couple of times, and they they feel very confident that they can do the job, and that private security isn't necessary in this area, and I agree with them on that. And what we've done is additional dollars are really being allocated, and you'll see it. It's about $600,000 that is specifically for technology in this area. So that's things like license plate readers. It's things like just general security cameras in and around specific intersections, as well as other types of technology that, to be frank, I don't know nothing really about. I'm just, I get the report from PD, and they tell me that it's going to enhance their response and policing activities in the historic Northwest. And I said, as long as it meets the innovative category, I'm all about it. And from my viewpoint, it does. So I feel pretty confident with the money that we've set aside for policing and innovative policing that the entire neighborhood should be safe.
Right, and I agree with you on that, but I just want to say our neighborhood kind of mirrors Northwood a little bit. And I know that when you see people walking around consistently, it just makes it more inviting. Like, cameras can be there, but it's nothing like having people walking around, talking to people and checking in. Just want to make that a little note.
Understood.
Good
Any other
evening.
questions?
Yes, good evening. This is Mamie Kistner. Can you hear me?
Hi, Mamie.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Chris, could you give us some quick information on the marketing of events and any idea on how that's going to be handled? Just a little more detail. Where
Richland,
it
do you
says
want to?
marketing event.
Sure, Richland, would you like to handle that question?
Sure. So right now, as Chris kind of mentioned, as we're gearing up for the preparation of the new fiscal year, we're working towards some of the events that we know are regular. And this is obviously with the intent that we won't have to go back to drive-in events and things like that. But starting with the holidays, we typically do a Winter in Paradise event, which would go on again this year. We're thinking about adding another holiday event to really highlight the lighting and decor that would be happening at the park and surrounding areas. So that's 2 events. And then we've typically done, a barbecue brews and blues event. We haven't confirmed that's exactly what the summer event would be yet, but we are having discussions on a particular summer event, whether it's something more Juneteenth related or a barbecue brews and blues type of event. And then those are the major events that we've kind of set aside for. And then any regular quarterly community meetings that we have are kind of included into those events and community engagement. And then we were also talking about some additional ideas for programming of the park, as Chris mentioned earlier, and still 4th and Rosemary site as well. So any marketing, typically we've done radio, we do social media. We are looking into adding some PR here as we're gearing up for a lot more, assets in the Northwest. We do have communications for construction projects and any promotions for that, printed materials, advertising of events and meetings and so forth. So photography, videography, all those things are included into that budget.
Quick question.
Yes,
Okay.
go ahead, Mamie.
Would we be working with our tourism, since of course we're dumping a lot of money, which is really needed, into this community? Are we going to be working with any of our tourism agencies to promote this to the tourists who are coming in to Palm Beach County, so that they are aware of this part of the city, which is really not something that has been done that much in the past? How are we working with the tourism on marketing?
Rishon, I'll take that one.
Oh, okay.
So Mamie, yes, we will be reaching out to discover the Palm Beaches. But frankly, more, I think what is more of an exciting effort is that because of everything that is happening in the city of West Palm Beach, there is a much broader coalition of interests now that want to see the city specifically handle marketing efforts that are not sort of part of a larger area to maybe do for regional promotion like Discover the Palm Beaches. We'll still work with Discover the Palm Beaches and participate and be part of that message. But I think what's more exciting is that just this week, we've started conversations with a lot of other property owners and interested parties, like the folks over at Rosemary Square, that are saying, okay, we've got a lot happening. We know the DDA has a lot happening. We know that the CRA has a lot happening. And what are we doing to really promote the city? And what are we promoting as it relates to really putting the city and all of the great things that are happening here, that is specific to the city of West Palm Beach. And when you start, I think, including a much broader range of participants and collaborators that are hyper focused on the city of West Palm Beach, I think you're going to see a lot more promotion that is more specific to our city and highlighting things like the Sunset Lounge, as well as in the same breath as maybe the convention center or some other parts of our city, so that they understand, like, when you come here, there is lots to see and there is lots to do. And you really need to see all parts of the city and not just one area.
Well, thank you. And just an additional comment on that. The Tourist Development Council has really been focusing on inclusion and diversity. So it is critical that not only we work, of course, within the city, but we are working with the county and making sure that the visitors that are tourists that are coming to this city are aware of this kind of project within one of our cities. So I would just encourage us to work with the TDC, Tourist Development Council, to make sure that this is part of the promotion, as not only Discover the Palm Beaches, but there are several other agencies that should be absorbing the marketing, helping with the marketing of this, so that we'll be inclusive of the tourists that we are trying to bring into this community, which brings more revenue to the city as well as our community.
Excellent. We'll be sure to do that, Mamie. Thank
Chris,
you.
if I may, really quick, also there's the partnership with Visit Florida, who is the state tourism organization that I have somewhat of a previous relationship with, along with Discover. So we are looking to tap into those partnerships this year.
And I just don't, I think it would also be beneficial if all of the TDC, I know that you can do presentations at their meetings, I think it would be important for us to look at doing a presentation to inform the TDC, the board, and the agencies of what's going on. We do have a member of the City Council of the City of West Palm on the Tourist Development Board. So that may be something we can look into so that all of the agencies, not just Discover the Palm Beaches, but the Sports Commission, the Culture, and all of them, which this would impact, would be aware of what's going on in the Northwest District. Thank
Great
you.
point. Yeah, thank you, Mamie. And where is Tawana at? Tawana, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, I stand corrected. We have set aside money for the private security in Heart and Soul Park. We have set aside $250,000. That is an oversight on my part, and I apologize.
Okay.
So we have set aside some money for that.
Okay, but we just don't have when it's going to take effect. Is it going to be after the sunset is officially completed?
No, so it's specific for Heart and Soul Park. So
Mhm.
once October 1 hits, we'll be sure to have a contract in place for that private security detail to be in Heart and Soul Park, and we'll share the details with you when that becomes available.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Chris, that's 250,000 just for that park for 1 year?
Correct. Private security is very expensive.
Sorry, but no comment.
Okay, this is the slide before had a little bit more detail. Now we're getting into some of the larger projects that we have slated, and again, a lot of these are ongoing efforts as we continue to wrap up some of these larger ones, and you'll see the projects that have bond dollars associated with them are noted. So the West Palm Beach Center for Arts and Technology, that's a pretty big one. We're working through some of the details now with the Salvation Army and with the NCAT board on the construction of that facility. But we have set aside some initial support, and that's the dollars associated with programming for that will occur at the PAL Center. And then the Sunset Lounge, we've put together some funds for the operations when they do get kicked off, and where we stand with the operator right now is that we are drafting the request for proposals, and you can that will actually be shared with the community prior to being advertised. We have a draft document that was created with a focus group that helped me do it. But that was just sort of a kickoff. Now I'm having the city attorney draft that, and then we'll have some community input on that document before it goes out. Then we'll put it out, and then you'll see a lot more detail come in as far as how the process is going to go. We anticipate the community to be very involved in the selection of that operator, and ultimately make a recommendation to the CRA board for the final selection of that operator. But it'll look amazing in the interior. That's why we have a pretty healthy budget set aside for finishing and closing that out. And that'll occur from the TCO time around July to when we anticipate a soft opening of some kind occurring in the beginning of fall of 2022. So total around for the Northwest target area is around 20 million. Almost 21 for this coming fiscal year.
Chris, where would that building be for the art and technology building?
So Reverend Washington, we're working with the Salvation Army right just to the north of their property. There's a vacant field. And so that entire property is leased. We have a lease with the Salvation Army on it. And so what we're working to negotiate with them on is an adjustment to that lease that would allow us to build the West Palm Beach Center for Arts and Technology just north of their building on that vacant piece of land. But obviously, adjusting that lease takes some time, and they've got to be comfortable with some of the details that are involved in that lease, because we don't want to be disruptive to what they're doing there. They're doing great work for the community. So we just have to work through some of those details right now in order to build a facility there.
Chris, I don't want to be critical, but, I mean, all the conversation, not all, but, poor people, housing in West Palm Beach is so expensive. If working people can't afford housing, and the money we spend, I mean, that's a great project, art and technology, who's against that? But it seems to me that somebody else could do that. I know it's political. Somebody else could do that. This affordable housing is a very important thing. We're going to have a city, people won't be able to afford to live here. It's just, the big bucks ought to be, to me, that's just my comment, ought to be on housing, affordable housing.
Well, and I think the CRA board and would agree with you, Reverend Washington. So the Grand, if we go back to that project, which I have it here somewhere. But the Grand, which here it's highlighted here, but it's basically at Rosemary. That's going to be about 401 units. And then you have Flagler Station, which is at the corner of Tamron and Banyan. And I will say that between the two of those projects is over $14 million worth of incentives going to create more housing for those two projects. And that is money that is coming out of the CRA. So while I agree with you, it's a lot of money that's set aside for the West Palm Beach Center for Arts and Technology. It really is not as much as we're spending on affordable housing currently. And then that doesn't even include all of the TIF payments, the tax increment financing payments that we're including in a lot of development projects that will create even more affordable housing that will be very close to the historic Northwest. May not be actually in the historic Northwest, because a lot of the taller buildings are happening south of Banyan, but there is a lot of affordable housing that it's been a cornerstone of the mayor's administration. And I can tell you every day he is counting the number of units and making sure that everybody, all the development interests that are coming in are including some type of affordable housing into their projects. So I agree with you. And I think that it also is clear by the recent actions of the CRA board with the amount of money that they've spent to date on affordable housing.
Thank you.
Chris, this is Ann Nelson, and I want to ask you about the Mickens Moore bed and breakfast.
Yes.
Can you give me any information on the timeline for the Mickens Moore property, the renovation that's going to take place there, and who specifically is going to operate the bed and breakfast? Is that going to be a contractual item that's going to be put out for someone?
Yes, Chris, let me take the first part of that.
Go ahead, Gina.
So yes, we are in the process, Ms. Nelson, of trying to get a architect on board to finish out the conceptualization of how both the building that we just moved from Gardenia to the back end of the homestead of 801 4th Street, and also the building across the street. That is underway. Once I can get the construction side of that going and understand what those dollars look like, then we will tangentially try to and put out an RFP for operations of that facility as well. And I am hoping and praying that in this next fiscal year that we will be a lot further along than we are. Because as you know, Ms. Nelson, the building that's on the opposite side, which was the old boarding house, is now shored up. And I'm running out of time on those shoring structures that are there. I've got to deal with that. They just can't stay there forever. So yes, it is on our schedule, and it's going to be on the work plan that Chris is going to be presenting here shortly. We're going to try to get those timelines nailed down. And let me just say for everybody that's on the call, CRA works very diligently at our projects, but you must all understand that we have to work in hand and in concert with other agencies within the city, particularly procurement, and the legal department, and they have more projects than just the CRA to deal with. So we are trying to shore that all up so that we can get real timelines, real expectations out on the street and get these things done. And that's my 2 cents for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Okay. Okay, so this is there. I do have another slide here on some of the community outreach. This was a slide that we included in the last presentation to note so that the commission was aware that we would be getting out to the community like we are now. We are also going to schedule another meeting to go over the budget if anybody is inclined to join us next Thursday. I believe it's September 2nd. We'll be doing this again in case anybody had missed it. It's just reiterating that, the budget is really based on a lot of the meetings that we've had in the community to date. And then lastly, I know I get a lot. Yes, Ann.
I'm sorry, Chris, this is Mamie Kistner again. I see we have, less than 20 people on this call. How are we reaching out to the community so they're aware? I got this at the last minute, which I was very surprised. I just think that we've got some lacking here in the outreach to the community. We need to plug some of these holes. And to just have this small amount of people tells me that we need to increase how we are putting this information out to our community. I got it yesterday. So how are we going to put this out?
Yes, Mamie, I'm happy to follow up with you on our tactics for community outreach on this offline. I do need to get through the budget because I want to make sure that we get through all the details of it, but I'm happy to go over that with you again. And I agree with you that we do need to get more information out. It's something that we continue to strive to do, which is why we're setting up another meeting a week from now. And I did take responsibility for that at the beginning and know that next year the flaw of not including this meeting maybe at an earlier time will not occur. But as I mentioned earlier, that we did base the budget on a lot of past community input and quarterly meetings that we've had throughout the year. And hopefully everybody feels comfortable that a lot of the discussion that occurred over the last 12 months is reflected in the budget to address the needs of not only the big projects that we've had, but also the smaller basic needs that folks want to see addressed, like trash pickup, which we'll get into here in a second about the increased scope for property works and things like that. And then also lighting and housing and vacant lots and things of that manner. So maybe I'm always willing to talk about how we can be better about outreach. So it's something I'll definitely follow up with you. I really need to get through the rest of the information here because there's quite a bit that's left.
I think that, and I think the public and the residents would be interested in seeing even a graph of a timeline of the outreach and what are the results of the outreach on a project of this size. That's my final comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mamie. So there was a lot of questions because of that increase to the guaranteed maximum price for the Sunset Lounge, what the impact was to the budget as a result of that increase. Luckily, because of the increases in value of the properties, it was something that was absorbed in the budget. However, the impact are things that we had planned to do that we can't now, and it's primarily addressing Rosemary. That is a very strategic action that the CRA has planned for, because what we are trying to do is to continue to make that connection across Banyan all the way down to the end of the north end of Rosemary, so that you have this great, safe, comfortable connection from the convention center all the way into the historic Northwest, anticipating that you'll have a lot of folks going back and forth between the two communities. So Unfortunately, that project that was slated to maybe have a construction budget, we're just going to do design this year. And then it also impacted our aggressive land acquisition activities. We did have to pare that back a little bit as a result of the increase in GMP to the Sunset Lounge. But luckily, no critical projects were affected by that budget allocation. Okay, so now moving into the other areas that are surrounding the historic Northwest. These areas obviously are going to be a lot lighter in some of the projects. The Clear Lake district, this is over there by Clear Lake, Australian and Tamarind Avenue, right around the Tri-Rail station. We have some planning activities that we need to continue to pursue. That will be, that's the $200,000 that we'll be moving forward with for a planning activity. Over in the Brailsford Park area, this is that Reserve for Future Projects funds. We anticipate a streetscape project happening with the No-Rod district. If you haven't heard about that, that's a group of folks that have acquired land and are going to do a mix of new development and historic preservation and make a great another district for the overall city. In the downtown core, this is probably the runner-up in the amount of funding that's been dedicated, and that's just because of the continued amount of things that are happening there. We will be doing a park on the waterfront. This is some type of playground amenity, because right now the downtown really doesn't have anything for kids in that. So you'll see the $200,000 that's allocated to that. We have quite a bit of interest from folks opening businesses in the downtown. So we've set aside some incentive dollars that's primarily set aside for the economic developer, Rebecca De La Rosa, that she can use when folks come in and want to improve some older office space in our downtown. The 314 Clematis Street, even though that there is a healthy budget set aside for that, myself and Rafael Clemente have made a very stern commitment to the city commission that we will keep spending that money to a minimum, so that hopefully next year when the budget comes back around, we can peel some of those dollars back into the general revenues to be allocated elsewhere. Trolley is back up and running. We have, as I mentioned, reduced some of the events and programming for the waterfront, and that's primarily because they didn't use some of the money from last year due to COVID. So they have monies that are necessary to do the programming for the waterfront. And then lastly, in the infrastructure and streetscapes, these are just some continued projects. The one new one is that there is a minor gap in front of the police station between Clematis Street and Banyan, that will begin designing that area so that we can begin construction on it and continue that progress of redesigning Rosemary in a very curbless, safe, comfortable manner into the historic Northwest. The contribution to the Downtown Development Authority, we do this annually. This year it'll be 4.7 million. This is Raphael and the Downtown Development Authority that does great work. We're really proud of all the things. If you had a chance to watch the Downtown Summit, just a wealth of information, and they are doing great things. I do want to do a quick shout out. They're doing a vaccination program currently, which has been applauded. The last I heard, they had gotten 40 people vaccinated, and they're actually incentivizing folks to do that. So worth checking out, but that's the money that'll be allocated to the DDA work plan this coming year. Other target areas, this is just sort of a general set of funds that are used throughout all of those districts for a variety of things. Banyan Streetscape, that's just as we wrap up the Banyan project. You'll see it's under construction, but that'll continue to move forward and is progressing. Down at the bottom, I do want to bring some note to the new technology. That's the $600,000 that we've allocated to innovative policing. And then also on the clean and green team, the property maintenance and the public works for all of the residents in the historic Northwest. This is really the money, that's almost $500,000 that we're going to set aside specifically for making sure that the neighborhood is kept in a very clean manner. So that's things like trash and litter, illegal dumping, working with our public works department. We understand how important it is to maintain a clean environment and the impact that can have on just the perception of a neighborhood. And it's something that we funded to make sure that it is maintained in a very positive manner. And that'll be used, primarily in the historic Northwest, but it is also some funds if we have issues outside of there as well. And all total, that's about 6.3 that can be used generally citywide. Oh. So that concludes the budget presentation. I am happy to open it to any questions. I see that we lost a few people, so I know we're about 10 minutes past the 7 hour. But at this point, Annie, if you want, I'll jump in with your question that you asked me back about the sticks houses. I don't want you to think I forgot about that. So where that project stands currently is we have tried to work with the property owner on those shotgun homes. And when I say try to work with them, first and foremost is that we tried to get them into compliance with the current agreement that they had with the CRA, which was a $300,000 incentive to refurbish the structure. I had sent them a default letter that said, look, we need you to move forward with this project. Here are the deadlines that you need to have your building permits. You need to have your financing in order and a whole bunch of other things. Unfortunately, they didn't meet the time frame to cure. So at which point, once we defaulted on their incentive, we took that $300,000 back and we put it back into the budget. And this is 2020 now. And so that money has been already reallocated for 2021, which is the current fiscal year that we're in. And I approached the property owner to actually purchase the property. Had sent him an offer in order to try to get that back in the control of the CRA so that we could try to make some effort to A, make sure it was safe because I didn't want somebody getting hurt, but B, also to save those buildings because they are part of the historic fabric of the community. But unfortunately, after the offer had been sent, we hadn't heard back. So I had gave the direction and asked the city attorney if we could proceed with foreclosures because there were quite a bit of liens associated with the property. And so that's where we currently stand, is that we are in the process of foreclosing on those in order to forcefully get control of the property and hopefully get it done in a timely manner where we can still save the structures. But my main concern right now is just making sure that people don't live in those houses because they are unstable and quite frankly dangerous. The building department has red tagged them and said, and the police know that nobody is supposed to be in or around those structures. So hopefully, they remain standing so that by the time the CRA gets control of them, we can put together a project and a plan and a budget. It's not going to be cheap to save those buildings in order to keep them as part of the fabric of the community.
If I may tag team on that, the end result, at least my dream for everybody that's listening, is to bring that into the fold of affordable housing as well. That's our end goal with those properties once we get them back.
That is accurate. Ms. Nelson, does that answer your question? She's still with us? Can you hear me?
I know she told me she was like going to be in and out, so.
Okay. Any other questions?
Darren had his hand raised, and then Cynthia has a question in the chat.
Great.
Darren first.
Okay, I just want to be clear, Chris, because I don't know if I heard it or not in reference to, I know we talked about the new $3 million that we're giving to the Sunset Project. That is not affecting our regular budget. That's somewhere else that came out of our regular standard.
Yeah, so basically what ended up happening is that we couldn't move forward with new projects as a result of the impact. But other projects that we had, we had budgeted for were not impacted by the increase in GMP for the sunset.
So if somebody wanted to do something new, that means they have to wait another year out, right? Know what you're saying?
Yeah, any new projects that maybe the reserves that we had set, we had in the budget, the reserve amount for future projects just went down rather significantly by the impact of absorbing the GMP. So
And land acquisitions, right?
And land acquisitions, unfortunately.
Okay.
So let me be clear. Let me also add to that, if I can, Chris and Darren. That does not mean that conversations cannot begin for new projects, because in the world of bureaucracy, to get us from conversation to a point of negotiation takes about the same amount of time that it would take for us to elapse through a fiscal budget year. So, meaning that if we were to start this conversations about a project that you think is worthy, or whomever else might be on this call maybe think is worthy, we can then start the planning for the next fiscal year. That's kind of how this process works. And I want to make sure that everybody understands that the fact that it's not slated or identified as a budget line item this year does not preclude it from being considered for the next fiscal year. Am I accurate on that, Chris?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, and to that mode, I appreciate that, Gina. I know how things come up. I just don't want to, if something else comes up that we say, okay, we got to do this over here
No.
versus that. I just want to make it.
It's all about being in line, in the feeding line, Darren. And I don't mean to be coy,
Gina.
but it is about being in line, and let's have these real discussions about real projects so that we can plan them and put them into the fold so that we can actually get allocation and funding for them.
Yeah, I mean, Darren, so many of these projects, they do take a little bit of time to understand, what the financial impact is. Also, if there's a significant ask, there's obviously a CRA board component to it where, the mayor and CRA board members also have to, be comfortable with moving forward with it. And a lot of times they want to make sure that if we are funding some new type of project, how does that square up with past precedent, and what have we done? And, was there a fair and equitable competitive way that we've done something? So there is, as Gina had mentioned, there's a lot of things that go into it. And frankly, starting now, if there is a project, now is a great time, because it's really hard, say, if you bring a new project in say June or July or August, when the budget's getting wrapped up, to then, sort of, get into the budgeting process at that time, because, there's just so many questions that we need answered in order to put it into the work plan.
Okay, I got two more things on that, but on that note, I just want to say, property around me, land acquisition around me can help stabilize, our project here. So I've said that before, but I want to say it again. Gina, you don't have to answer. I'll be over to see you tomorrow. But trolleys, I know we have the trolleys running through Northwest, and I just don't want people to take, us residents and property owners for granted. Let's get our input on where those should stop. And if we see something, I just want to make sure we have open lines of communication about those trolleys that's running through our neighborhood now. I think they're great, but at the same time, I feel like we just watching them by when we see maybe some possible places they could stop right now. We know the end all be all is the sunset, but until then, there's some places I feel that, they can stop to, transport people around right now. And lastly, I want to say about the streets, the clean and green. Since we got more lighting now, I don't know, I see the streets on Clematis being clean, pressure washed before, but I just know our streets over here, since we're getting new lighting, you can see how they've been neglected. So, but I look at opportunities in that. I think that's an opportunity that we can put together a small, hopefully, company in the Northwest. I know a couple guys, and we can propose them, you know, pressure washing some of the streets, some of the places around, and we can create economic, opportunities in the community. But
Darren, I love that idea. And frankly, where I would want to make sure, stays, very polished, is, the 7th Street, 8th Street, Rosemary, all around there where we just did a whole bunch of investments. So I think that's a definitely an idea worth looking into more.
Right.
And to his point, Chris, I will put that as a note, and we'll double back and talk about how we can make that become a more of a higher priority in terms of street cleaning. And I think we can work with Josh's team to work with that.
And also tree cutting, tree trimming in that. Well, what's the process of, just cutting back some of the trees off the buildings and stuff like that? I know that's a city issue, but it grows quick. The iguanas, they're crazy over here. And so I've talked to Josh, well, I think his name Josh with sanitation, but he, said something about CRA. I just want to mention it everything. I just think it's important that we, take care of the neighborhood as a whole, not just our focus points.
Note taken.
Yeah, and I would probably say, Darren, as long the only thing I would say about trees is that I'm happy to take care of them as long as they are in the either on CRA property or city property or in the city right away. If we're talking about trees that are on private property, it gets very, very tricky for us to do.
No, I'm talking about trees that are in the city, but they hang over, they hang over in, on buildings and stuff like that, which is great because we love the shade, down 3rd Street, but at the same time, they're,
No taken, Darren. No taken.
Yeah.
I'll double back on that. Yes, absolutely. No taken.
So I saw the note from Cynthia.
Yes. And then Crystal had her hand raised.
Okay, so Cynthia, what specifically can be done with the 50,000 for trees? Do you have an amount it costs to irrigate a single tree pit? So the answer is yes, we do have the cost to irrigate a single tree pit. The $50,000 is actually part of an initiative to plant trees in the historic Northwest. This was something that was talked about at one of our last quarterly meetings, where where we are going to plant more trees in the area, but because it's just planting the trees and the installation didn't include irrigation, sustainability had asked if the CRA could dedicate 50,000 strictly for the irrigation of those trees. They had developed that budget, and they had, I believe, because this was set before I became executive director, that amount was allocated based on understanding what it was going to cost to annually water the trees throughout the neighborhood that were recently planted. So if you want the cost breakdown per single tree pit, I would have to chase down sustainability to get that amount for you, Cynthia. Crystal.
Chris, thank you for the presentation. I had a question in regards to, it was discussed in previous community meetings. I didn't see it in this presentation. Maybe if it's there, it's there. If not, we discussed, I guess, high traffic going on within the historic Northwest area. And I've noticed extremely since the construction has been happening, especially on Tamron, we discussed about possibly putting some speed bumps. Is that something that's going to be possibly looked at into the next budget? Because I didn't see it in this budget, and it's pretty bad right now.
So,
go ahead, Chris.
well, hold on one second, Gina. So you're right, Crystal. And I have heard about this speeding issue over the past year. The reason why we don't have funding dedicated this fiscal year is that we didn't have a specific project or street that the speed bumps were going to be installed. And the reason we don't have the specific street, because I'm sure you could tell me you need to put them on 6th Street or you need to put them on Douglas. which I would agree with you on. The problem is that it's the engineering department will not give a permit on speed bumps if the CRA were to apply for it without a list of property owners and residents petitioning to say, we would like traffic calming on this street or on this neighborhood. And we would then be required to gather those petitions. So at one of the last quarterly meetings, what I had said is I am happy to set aside funding for traffic calming. I know it's a priority. I know it's something that you need. And I think that it would have the full support of the CRA board. What I need is the residents to just put together that petition that meets the engineering policy that they've set that says, okay, we understand all the property owners and residents want this. We're going to go ahead and move forward. And then that's really all I need. It's just not something that the CRA can just go out and arbitrarily pick a street. I need to know from the residents, this is where you need me to start. Here you have the residents that all agree that it needs to happen. And then I'll go ahead and I'll set aside the funding for it to make it a reality. So that's really just the big hang up, Crystal, is that if you could help me gather the residents together in the form of support for a specific starting point, I'll be sure that the funding gets set aside for those traffic calming.
And you know, Chris, I just want to piggyback off of that. I did get the paperwork. I don't know who it came from. I forgot his name for the speed bumps because I was really pushing for it on 6th Street, especially now that 6th Street is a detour street. And I think that it really sucks that the engineer department has a policy that they want us as residents to literally go around and get signatures to literally tell what streets need it when at least one resident from per street is telling you that, not you particularly, but telling you that this is what this street needs. This, and if I get at least a couple people off my street, Crystal get a couple people off of her street, why isn't that enough? Why does it have to be literally almost the whole community saying we need more speed bumps if you know the area?
Let me just jump in. Let me bifurcate the
Go ahead, Gina.
Because I gotta be the technical guru here. All right. So the first issue has to do with the temporary rerouting because of the construction. That is something that I have already spoken to Vladimir about because I've gotten constant complaints about those issues and people going down the wrong way. That's a temporary measure. What Chris is talking about in terms of the petition and all of that is a permanent measure. The permanent measure is the stimulus for the engineering department to say, okay, we got to go out and put those little stripes across the street, see what the traffic counts are, and we have to come up with a study to understand what the traffic patterns are before they'll go out and put a permanent bump in that street, because it affects more things than just simply people running through the neighborhood. It also affects immediate responses from the EMTs as well as the police. So all of those things have to be studied, right, on a permanent basis. On a temporary basis, and that's the thing I think you're talking about right now, Crystal and Tawana, is what do we do about the temporary rerouting of the traffic and how people are not complying with whatever the MOT is, which is mode of operation transit. That I'm working on. I have put out a note through Dr. Wen because she came in and actually saw me. And then I put out an email to Vladimir, who is the engineering civil person on that team with the Tamron project. And I'm trying to get some answers for that. So give me an opportunity and I'll follow up with both of you directly.
Okay, Gina, really quick. Yes, I am speaking on the permanent portion because this is something that came up even before the construction on Tamron. But question for you,
Yes.
How many signatures, if we go through with getting this for permanent, how many signatures is needed that we have to get from our community residents?
All right, so it's in that application, and it's usually the affected parties probably within a 400-degree radius. We can talk about those particulars, and I'm going to look at that a little bit more closely from a permanent standpoint. Right now, I'm trying to deal with your immediate issue, and then we'll look at it on a more permanency basis. But just know that from a procedural standpoint, You just don't put speed bumps because it has more trickling effects than you actually recognize. Just because you put a bump in the road, it may slow down the traffic for a minute, but believe me, folks will figure out how to get around that traffic bump. So we have to be very, very intentional about where they go and how it works, not just from the area that you see as an immediate problem, but how it spreads out. If you go to cascades out throughout the entire area, around you and wherever the area that you deem is the problem. So that's the bureaucratic response. On the permanency, on the temporary, we're working on that. And I'll get back to you, and I'll come back to you and Crystal and the affected parties in that particular area on that.
And
Okay.
Tawana, if you've already started that outreach, and you need a little bit more assistance, I mean, really, if you can lead the charge on that, you know, you have my commitment. I'll provide the support for you.
Yeah,
I just want to say, this is Ann Nelson. We've gone through that process, and you've almost got to have the majority of the residents on whatever street it is that you want to put speed bumps on. And that's what we had to do. We had to get the petitions of almost the majority of the people that lived on the streets that wanted the speed humps, because there may be residents who really don't want it. We have had some that didn't want it, and you know, they were opposed to it. So you really need to get at least the majority of the people.
You're absolutely right.
Be on board with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Tawana. Tawana, my name is
Yes.
Tanya Rich, and we own property on 6th Street. So if you need someone to sign the petition, I'll sign the petition with you.
You got it, Miss Tanya. Thank you, and it's nice to meet you.
And Miss Tanya and the other two that I do know, we can all collectively come to your meetings. I hope that Dr. Wen is putting together. I'll come in and I'll speak more directly on that point from a technical standpoint and also from an interim standpoint. Okay?
Okay, Gina, thank you.
And I just want to add, if you don't have if you all want to put your contact and you feel comfortable putting additional contact or your contact, please put it in the chat so we can get your name and contact, the best way to stay in touch with each other, please.
Other questions? Crystal, did you have any other other questions?
No, we've pretty much addressed majority of them. You've answered them in speaking on past issues, especially for the properties. So it was just that one that I didn't hear that we were discussing. So from a legal standpoint, I do understand it, Gina. So I will be working with Tawana, as we always do, to see if we can get this situated and done, because this is an issue that's been before. So I understand.
Thank you.
I have a question. This is Tanya. My question is, how do you find out what the CRA owns and what the city owns as far as empty lots or property? Empty lots, that would be my question.
Very simple. Very simple. Make a request to me. I am not in a position to give you actually, here it is. I'll just do it. gbaker@wpb.org. Send me a request for that and we'll send you our list of properties.
Thank you.
Miss Tanya, put your contact information in the chat so that we could get in contact with you too.
I did. I'm ahead of
you.
Other questions?
No question, but I'm about to get off, Mr. Chris, because the kids are wanting my attention now. So I really look forward to speaking with you about the lot on 6th Street. It has gotten a lot worse, and the traffic. I spoke to who are they? Warner Turner, the company for the construction. I did inform them when I seen them at the Black Business meeting that our sign that they put on 6th and Division is falling over. So people are going the wrong way, and it is causing a lot of commotion with traffic. People almost about to get in an accident. So he did ask for pictures, but I lost his card. So I was supposed to take pictures of it. And I informed them that the people that's sitting on the lot, their cars are parked on both sides of 6th Street. So it's literally a lot of traffic coming from Tamron and us trying to leave to get to Tamron. We have to wait for other cars to come through. So this lot is literally giving a lot of issues right now, especially with redeveloping Tamarind, but I just want to put that out there.
No, thank you so much. And so two things, we're working on the temporary fencing to go around the property. And that is going to be a construction fence, so it'll be pretty high. It's not going to look the best, but at least it will cordon off the property so that you can't, loiter and hang out on it. And then the second is getting you an update on where we stand with getting that that property out to bid to get a house actually built on it.
Yeah, it'll be more
Okay,
than
no problem. It just, Miss Gina, just if you can just make sure they do something about the sign for the detour because it keeps falling.
Yeah, I got you on that. I'll deal with that first thing in the morning. I thought I dealt with it, but obviously I didn't.
Okay.
So, yeah, I thought I did.
Okay, have a good night, you guys.
Thanks,
Before you go, Chris, do you have any further things? Because I just want to say something to everybody, whoever's left on the call.
Well, real quick, hold on real quick, before we get into closing comments, because I do want to give Commissioner Fox the floor as well to just, make any comments that she would like to make. But does anybody else have any other questions related to the budget, Historic Northwest, or what's happening? Okay, great. Commissioner Fox?
Thank you. I know everyone's trying to run and get with their kids, so I'll just make it brief, but please feel free to reach out to me as well as Chris for any other questions. Thank you all for being here tonight and giving us your input. And as Chris said, there will be another meeting next week, and we really want to have as much attendance and input from as many residents as we can. So, if there's people that that might want to jump on and give their feedback, please, feel free to share the info with them so that we can get as much community input as possible. And have a great night.
All right, Gina, be my guest.
So I just simply want to say that all the folks that know me and those of you who don't, I've been personally at this. This is an endeavor. It's a baby of mine with the Historic Northwest for now approaching 7 years. And I have to tell you the commitment both from the current commissioner and those in the previous administration, and now with Chris Rube, they have been uber vigilant in trying to do the right thing for the Historic Northwest. And it is a pleasure to work with not only them, but also you all. And let's just get this thing done and work together hand in hand. That's all I have.
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you. Thanks, Gina.
Am I included in that?
No,
of course, Darren.
Your mother is.
I just want to hear her say it. I just want to hear
Okay, Darren, you are.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for being with us tonight. Hopefully we'll see you next week. Have a great weekend. And thanks so much. Let us know if you have any questions.